So, what if I told you that a single fundamental flaw in our global money system is the actual root cause of all the rising geopolitical tension we're seeing? Today, we're going to dig into a pretty provocative theory that connects the way we handle money to a potential crisis just around the corner. Let's break it down.
The whole thing kicks off with this really big puzzle. Why have all the major economic ideologies, capitalism, communism, you name it, why have they all failed to create lasting monetary stability? It's a huge question, right? But the source material we're looking at has let's just say a pretty unconventional answer. So here's our roadmap for connecting the dots. First, we're going to look at why these big economic theories just aren't cutting it anymore. Then we'll get to the heart of the matter, what's supposedly causing all this. We'll see how this plays out with the US dollar, how it could all blow up in a geopolitical flashpoint, and finally, we'll explore some of the proposed solutions. Okay, let's dive right in with this idea that our economic theories have completely stalled out. The basic idea here is that all the big modern ideologies have broken one single crucial promise, the promise of a stable monetary system. And according to the source, this isn't just a one-off thing. It's universal. It doesn't matter if you're talking about communism, capitalism, or socialism. None of them, and I mean none, have figured out how to stop these constant boom and bust cycles. For all their differences, they all share this one massive flaw. So that makes you wonder, right? If all these completely different systems are failing in the exact same way, could there be some shared underlying cause? Well, the source we're looking at says yes, there is. It points to one single fundamental flaw at the very core of our modern economy. And the entire argument really hinges on this one concept, sometimes called rent or riba, but what we're talking about is simply the practice of charging interest, collecting a fee on a loan. But here's the kicker. According to this source, this isn't just some neutral financial tool. No, it's the actual poison in the system, the central problem in modern banking and insurance. Yeah, and they do not mince words about it either. It's not just called inefficient, it's straight up called a form of legal extortion. Now, this perspective comes from a place where interest is actually forbidden, as in Islamic law. So it views the whole practice as something that's just inherently dangerous and exploitative. So get this, the critique isn't about how much interest we charge, it's about the fact that we charge it at all. Okay, so this slide really puts the two choices side by side. On one side, you've got our current system, based on interest, and it's shown as this tangled, burdensome mess, what the source calls extortion. And on the other side, an interest-free world. The claim is that this path is more natural, more effective, and would basically clear the way for much smoother global trade. Okay, so that's the big theory, that interest is the root problem. But you might be asking, how does that actually show up in the real world? Well, the analysis points to one major symptom, the huge problem of the too high US dollar. So the argument goes like this. Our whole system, built on interest, artificially pumps up the value of the dollar. And that sets off this really nasty chain reaction you see here. American products get way too expensive, so the country becomes super dependent on imports, which leads to high unemployment at home, and ultimately it just damages the entire American economy. So, what's the fix? The solution proposed by the source is, well, it's pretty radical. It's a two-parter. First, you'd have to devalue the dollar to make U.S. goods competitive again. But the bigger, more systemic fix is to anchor all currencies to a real, tangible standard, in this case, gold, to create a truly stable and level playing field for everyone. All right, now this is where things get really intense. This is where all that economic theory smashes right into real-world geopolitics. This source lays out this hypothetical but really detailed scenario to show that this kind of instability doesn't just cause a recession. Oh no, it can actually light the fuse for a major international conflict. So let's walk through this. Picture this. It's January 7th, 2026. The U.S. military attacks Venezuela, arrests the president, and seizes oil tankers. The global reaction is, as you'd expect, immediate and furious. But it doesn't stop there, not even close. The U.S. then threatens Greenland, which is part of Denmark, a NATO ally. And what's the end result? A totally fractured alliance, forcing Europe to build up its own military and pull away from the United States. It's just a terrifying domino effect. And look, this isn't just some wild theory pulled out of thin air. The analysis actually brings in the perspective of Edmund Duckwitz, a former German ambassador. And his take on it is, frankly, it's chilling. He calls this potential breakup of the world into competing blocs a dangerous scenario.
And that gives this whole forecast a very real, very heavy weight.
Okay, so here we are at a major turning point. We've seen the diagnosis of the economic problem and a pretty grim geopolitical forecast. In this last section, we're going to look at the two paths forward, the proposed solution on one side and the pretty scary future we might be facing if things stay the same.
The solution on the table is, and there's no other way to put it, a total economic reset. Step 1, get rid of interest completely. Step 2, re-anchor the entire global system to a gold standard. The argument is that this is the only way to create a genuinely fair and stable world economy. But if that reset doesn't happen, well, this is the world that Ambassador Duckwitz is warning us about. A world literally broken into 3 separate spheres of influence. You'd have the United States controlling the Americas, Russia dominating Eastern Europe, and China holding power over Asia. It's basically a return to a Cold War-style division, a world of powerful blocs all competing with each other. And that's where it leaves us, with this massive choice. On one hand, you have this radical economic solution. On the other, a forecast of incredibly dangerous geopolitical fragmentation. And it really forces us to ask ourselves a tough question. Are we going to try and build a path toward a more stable global system, or are we just sleepwalking into a divided world?